Welcome everyone. Today we have another new episodes and we will discuss about university concept. Mr. Tom actually working with his team, and already many university from World Talent Economy Forum, they show their interest that how we can work together, and we will discuss on that particular point. Specifically in the COVID-19 period, many university cannot uh, do their regular activities because of COVID-19 and many more challenging, especially technological challenge and many more things. So Mr. Tom actually trying to solve many interesting problem in a unique way. So I want to start with Mr. Tom and then Mr. Brent Elman. So how do you want to uh, share your point of views about this university? Beside that, I want to add one point. Happy Chinese New Year. So
Thank you.
let's start. Yeah.
Yes, good. Yeah, new beginnings, and that's what this is all about. Earth Plexus, and I'm glad that you're pitching this as Earthling University because we talked about that. And thank you for doing this series. This will be the third in this series focused on Earth Plexus and what we're doing. And it's really born out of a need, a real sense of urgency, because as CEO of TAFs, we've been working for the last 6-7 months, getting that all together, primarily for Africa. It's not Africa centric. We're just starting in Africa and taking our time and getting it right and figuring out the best way to set up our platform to serve our members, who are primarily young people in Africa. But we're taking it steady, and it's a determined pace. But we also realize that we need to start setting up scouting locations for the next TAFs. And so that's why Earth Plexus was brought back. Earth Plexus is kind of a scouting organization for our think tank, in that we can go to different areas like Malaysia, start setting up relationships with organizations in different categories, and start preparing the way to start training young people even sooner than maybe TAFs can, because TAFs is going to be a steady, slow migration, and it's a very important educational arm of Earth Plexus. And so that's really, all of this is really kind of born out of our shows that we've done with you, because there's so much interest in Malaysia and Southeast Asia for what we're trying to do, and so much need for courses and training and skills training about AI and the emerging technologies, and really just a new approach to what we will be doing as humans in the coming age. And so today I really wanted to talk about the sense of urgency that we have. And we're going to be discussing, you and I and Brent, after the show. We're going to be going deeper into setting this up. But there's a real sense of urgency. There's so many trends that are converging right now with AI and automation, and it's displacing people left and right, globally, in different industries. And this genie is out of the bottle. That's not going to stop. So we need to reconsider how we are going to develop an economy based on our unique skill sets. And so that's really what this is all about. It's like getting all the humans together quickly to figure out how to first of all make money in this new economy. How do we generate revenue? What do we do that shows a new kind of value that we can trade on the open market? And there's a lot of positive trends that have been sped up because of COVID. And so we're just trying to harness all this right now. And it's really important that young people who are coming out of college know exactly where to go to be the most valuable. And so that's what this whole effort is about. And there's a real urgent need for it.
Mhm. Thank you, Mr. Tom. Mr. Brent, you have strong engagement with different youth community. So what the feedback you get from around the world, specifically for this Earthling University project?
I've definitely got a lot of folks that I'm connected with all over the world, and there's a lot of excitement for these projects. It depends on the different, nation, depending on the focus of what they're most excited about. Of course, this Earth Plexus thing is, as Tom was saying, a bit of more of a scouting concept. So, a lot of the conversations we've been having have been more related to TAFs, and this Earth Plexus has been kind of in our back pocket for now. But I mean, there's a ton of excitement. We're at a point essentially with TAFs where we kind of came to a bit of a bottleneck. when we had our magazine release, there was a lot of interest in our organization, a lot of folks wanting to join our ranks and get involved with what we were doing. And so I'm in the process right now of trying to devise some sort of platform that can kind of decentralize communications amongst the community so that we don't get that type of bottleneck in the future when people start migrating over to these platforms. I've actually been talking to some other folks too that are working on some similar alternative social media sites to just kind of help the community engage with itself. We don't really feel the need to micromanage these folks. We're really trying to just empower. So there is, of course, been quite a bit of excitement, and I know that Tom and myself are quite excited as well.
Excellent. Mr. Tom, actually, you have a lot of experience to work in the AI field. Yes, Asia Pacific also moving with this fourth industrial revolutions, and yes, they are growing very fast. But my question is that, like, how your Earthling University can add values both in academia and industry?
Yeah. Well, it's really intended to be a stopgap. It's like a bridge or a mezzanine type of way to, because the educational system is not keeping pace necessarily in most regions with the change with the AI automation age coming through. And so there's no mandatory AI courses in most universities, so it makes sense that the educational system will lag behind this whole new industry for a while. And so in the meantime, we need organizations like Earthplexus and TAFs who are coming in to upskill young people immediately with real world needs. And if nothing else, just to draw attention to this gap. You were sharing some percentages, I think it was last week or the week before, about how much retraining needs to go into a person coming out of college into a specific industry. And that's the problem, is that people are coming out of college having learned some through some school what they need to do in this industry, but they're finding that industry is completely changed by the time they get to it. And that's because of AI automation. We talk about this many times, but I always encourage my sons and any young people that I'm working with to take a course in AI. You don't need to understand algorithms or math. You just need to understand how to work with this thing. And so what is exciting and challenging about where we are right now in the world is it's challenging because we can't really keep pace with the change. So when students are coming out of college, they're not quite up to par with what is needed in that position. And it takes time and money to retrain and to bring them up to speed and take advantage of their education. And what's exciting about it is that with AI automation, although it's a threat to many professions and industries, it's also allowing us to be more human. It's allowing us to focus on very specific skill sets that we've lost over the last couple of 100 years. And so it's a challenge because we really need to act quickly to prepare kids to work with AI, or any new technology. And what's exciting is that by doing so, we will be able to do more of what it is we're here to do as human beings. And so a lot of my work, a lot of the courses that I'm developing and have developed as a consulting system are about that. They're about really focusing in on human empathy and using that as a lubricant for problem solving. Also talking more about problem finding and conveying of problems rather than trying to solve them, because AI can do all of that now if we know how to properly convey what the problem is. So there's a whole slew of different types of education that we need to be focused on right now that have little to do with algebra or your basic reading, writing, and arithmetics. And we really need to do this quickly, because if we don't, there's going to be real consequences in this lag time as we try to catch up, or we try to fit our economy into our old world economy into this whole new world. And so the sense of urgency is both an emergency and should be a little bit stressful because we got to take care of this now, but it's also makes it very exciting if we do this right. And so that's what we're trying to do. Is we've got all kinds of courses and experts who have a niche that they're an expert in, and we can find those in the people we work with. Students have a niche expertise, and so it's all about honing in on these things and quickly developing a whole new economy based on not just productivity, but on our passions. We need to do that. Now we can do that, and so it's exciting and scary, and we want to be right there at the tip of that spear with Earth Plexus and creating platforms, building stages for young people to do their thing. Because we're not coming with any of the answers. We're just coming with the interest in listening and the interest in empowering, as Brent said, and enabling young people to solve and fix their future.
Mhm. Thank you, sir. One of the specific question I want to take from audience, because this question is very important, I think, that from Mr. Jason. What age group are you thinking about educating? Are you wanting to include basic educations or start the curriculum at high school level or higher? I think, yes.
Well, if you're asking me, I would say the sooner we do this, the better. As far as Earth Plexus courses, these seem to make more sense in the university level, even just prior to graduation, just to get people set in whatever industry they're in and give them some real world, brave new world skills. But actually, we need to start doing this very early on, elementary school, if not preschool. We know that kids are coming into the world with screens and supercomputers in their hands, and there's a whole new mindset that is emerging. And I do think that we need to start training kids early on. We need to shift over from the industrial age educational format, which served us well, obviously, in the last couple of 100 years, but it has no real place anymore. We need to even bring in AI to the educational process, because it can customize a curriculum to every individual person. And so this is all about honing in on an individual student, one student, pulling out, extracting their core capacities, their niche expertise, what it is that excites them, that they want to learn, that they want to do, and place value on that and enhance it, and have AI or whatever technology we use customize an education that gives them the kind of background and the kind of information and historical information, math, whatever it is, that really augments their core capabilities. And we can do that now. And the one thing that COVID has done for us, other than cleaning up the atmosphere and helping ecologically, is it has accelerated things like this, like the online communication services and online schooling, and it's really caused us to have to realize what a customized, personalized curriculum would look like.
Mhm.
And we have that capability to do that. So we need to seize that. We can't, there's no going back to normal. Going back to normal is death. We need to seize on these trends that are happening now, and really harness this whole new mindset that this younger generation has.
Mhm, mhm. Yes, this is very important, that we cannot go for the like last 2 years before, like normal life. Yes, many things we need to change, and specifically, I think we need to adapt with the technologies, and I think the entire system we need to change. Even in COVID-19 situation, what I'm observing, especially in education sectors. And Mr. Brent Hellman, I want to know more. Like example, as these universities and its concept and curriculum more on techno driven. So what the benefit actually the corporations or the youth community will get from this university, Earthling University? What your perception and how you can integrate it with this ecosystem?
Yeah, I think that it's hard. You can't really put your finger on just one single benefit. I think that the key word that we consistently use is coalesce. And so, we've got all these different programs and organizations that create this ecosystem, as you mentioned. And I think that there's a number of benefits. Of course, the educational aspect, being exposed to all these different, sources of information. We're not really trying to monopolize the educational program that we're working with through Earth Plexus. Tafts is working on an Academy of the Future right now. we've discussed working with some other organizations as well, like the Khan Academy, some of these corporations that are offering courses that are prerequisites to being hired, and so a benefit that would be enabled by folks joining into our community is that they will be able to have all of these things in one place. And so that's one benefit. And then, of course, not just these different programs, but the community itself. Really trying to facilitate some kind of group infrastructure so that everybody can kind of commune amongst themselves and intermingle with these folks who have similar passions, similar goals, similar interests. And so that's yet another benefit. And, I think that we're really looking for people to kind of be these idea generators for what we're doing as well. And so it's not that these folks, we're not trying to have an us and them. We're not trying to create an other. We're trying to really embrace all of these different minds and coalesce them all into one cohesive community ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Tom. Actually, this like audience just trying to come up with a lot of idea, but I want to take these questions that obsolete. I think this is his name anyway. Why does the burden of building a future fall on the young people who had their future stolen from them by the Dunning anyway? So actually, what do you think? What do you think the why we should give all of the responsibility to the youth community, or what we can do for them? I know that you are taking responsibility. You are giving them better education system or better skill development things with them and breathing with them. So yeah, unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. Okay, yeah,
Okay.
I totally feel that what he's feeling, because when I was in my early 20s, I felt the same way. It's like there's so many issues, so many problems that we are inheriting, and environmental issues were really big for Generation X, for my generation. And and I know that feeling of why is it come down to us to have to fix these things? And so that's a very common generational issue that we all deal with. I think every generation feels that way. But what's different now, I think, is because people like me who are Generation X, who are in our 50s and older, who may be in positions to be able to help in a real way, are listening more. And I think that's a symptom of what's happening generationally. If the baby boomers were a huge population, they brought us the 60s, they brought us the liberation movements, and they were such a huge population that they shifted the whole planet in different ways, back and forth. We went also through the 80s with the whole kind of more greed is good kind of thing. But and so behind the Generation X, are the millennials plus, and they're another huge, even larger group of people. And so in the middle, we have these Gen X people my age and a little younger. I am at the front of that generation, and we're a small group of people, and we're kind of like the middle children of the earth right now. And there's something powerful in being in this position, especially when you're a small group. You're not trying to push your views on anybody. You've got the huge baby boomers on one end, huge millennials on the other, and we're in a position now where we can understand what went wrong with the baby boomers and listen to what is happening with the millennials, because the truth is we're the last analog generation. My childhood was analog. I had cords on my phones and had to dial the telephone with my finger, and we were an analog childhood, and now we've grown into becoming digital adults. We're talking about a massive population on the planet of digital natives, young people that have a whole different mindset, and we need to cater to that. And I think it's not only because I always believe that we should focus on young people, because obviously they're going to be around longer, the consequences of their decisions are going to last longer, and so I always believe that we should be focusing on what young people are doing, because not to have the arrogance or the ego of I know better than you, because we don't. We are in a whole different world now. So that's why I really focus on young people, not just because in general I think it's a good idea to listen to young people because they're going to have to deal with the solutions longer, but because this is a very unique time in history. We've got a whole new breed of Earthling coming up behind us that didn't have the experiences we had, and they don't need to, and and so I think it's important to appreciate that, not limit screen time, not impose my beliefs onto these people, because we're talking about a whole new type of mindset, and it requires that new type of mindset to solve some very serious problems. And so I do think it's important to listen to young people and to give them a platform and to help them formulate and to apply their ideas in any way we can. And it's important now to do that.
Okay. One specific point I just want to add, according to UN, its data on 263 million people, 1 in 5 children aged 16 to 17 not in school. I think this data is around the world. So I think still we need to work together. We need to work hard, especially for education sectors. So Mr. Brentelman, what solution you have for these kids?
Sure, and I mean, just to add to what Tom was saying as well, a big focus, of course, was Africa through TAFTS, and similarly to the data that you're pointing out here, in Africa, the median age is 19, and the folks who we work with, our colleagues and friends out in Africa, have really expressed a dissatisfaction with the educational systems out there. So that's really kind of driven things as well to be, education focused, because at the end of the day, Earth Plexus education is just one of the tiers that we're going to be focusing on. But what was your question once more, Sharif?
Yes, actually, from 263 million people, youth, like students, like from their 1/5 of the students, actually, they are out of school. Still, they are not with this school system. So here is the data. Actually, here is the data from UN, United
Yeah,
Nations. Yes.
absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, this really doesn't surprise me, because I mean, I know for myself, and I was, part of the millennial generation, but now that you've got, these younger folks coming up and stuff, generation, what is it? Regardless, the I think of my generation as the generation of ADD or ADHD. Just there's just so much, so many attention deficit disorders and just focus issues, and that's not because of inherently these psychological conditions, as much as the fact that we were raised in these environments where we've got these TVs in every room that are blasting all these commercials. I remember when I was a kid, I'd watch these cartoons, and you'd almost enjoy the commercials just as much when you were a kid watching Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon, because there'd be all these toys. I remember just being like, I want that, and it was just one thing after the next, flipping through. And then when I tried to go into school, my focus was, expecting things to kind of transition from thing to thing to thing. And it was really tough for me to just stay focused. And so, a big thing that folks are doing nowadays is, they're realizing that the way that they can counter this focus issue is by making things into games, and so I think that by completely retailoring the educational system, by being aware of the human psyche and including ways to really keep people motivated and captivated, is going to really prevent this massive figure of folks who should be in school from being outside of their classroom, because they're going to actually want to learn. Because here in the United States, at least, as opposed to many other places, and I mean, you can't really sum things up too entirely, but I feel as though I see a lot more inherent interest from folks in developing nations versus folks in the United States that I grew up around. Everyone kind of just waited for the school bell to ring, to leave class, and to kind of go and live your life. And now I see that there's these people that, tremendous amount of people who really want to learn. They're really passionate about it, and it just doesn't seem like the infrastructure is set up for them in this society, in this day and age. And so, that's a big reason and a big push why we're trying to, help work with these different groups in creating some new options for, these digital natives, as Tom refers to them.
Okay, I love to like engage more things, because example, the youth community, those who engage with academic system, many of them actually unemployed.
Mhm.
To say specific issues I find from my personal life. Number one, academy actually not support youth community for grow more startup, more unique things, more innovative things. That's why in one instance, they cannot produce more things, and they more depend on industrials job and this kind of things. But when they move to the industry said, what is your experience, this that, because they have shortage of job, and developing nations, they do not have enough investment, and many things happening. So is this university only focusing on training and developments, or we should focus on developing better ecosystem in industrial engagement, academic engagement, government influence, proper blueprints, and execution?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on it there, because really the primary goal of any of this, anything anybody does, is money, right? We need to generate revenue. We need to pay our bills. The system is fueled by money. And, we can dance around ideas and concepts, but when it gets down to it, we all need to make a living. And that's going to become harder and harder if we keep on this track that we're on with the industrial age track. So there's a way to do this. There's a way to create a whole new economy to actually make money on what it is we enjoy doing. I think the first part of that gets to your question about the ecology or the economy, the ecosystems in different places, is to first of all hit the mindset. We need to talk about or do courses or have a general theme that means appreciate where you're from and understand the value of the data, your very specific type of data in your region or your culture. It's fascinating to people outside. What's that scripture? No man is a prophet except in his hometown, basically. We don't really appreciate where we're at, or we don't appreciate the novelty of my experience in Colorado, USA, and in the eyes of somebody from Malaysia, and vice versa. It's fascinating to me. I want to go to Malaysia. We all want to share. So there's something about first making a point of upping that mindset to being to appreciate where you're from, and to show appreciation for other areas, and start working with our very specific data. And so that's really the primary goal of all of this, is to eventually move toward a whole new economy so we can make money at doing what we do best, which is being human. And there's certain qualities and skills that we've kind of let atrophy through the industrial age. There's even psychic or intuitive capabilities we have, which is more just qualia of information that we're bringing in. There's art and music and things that we're really good at, that we should be basing our economy on. And now that AI and automation will take over all the other stuff. This is a constant sermon I keep giving on every show, but I think there's a real sense of urgency to do this now. And so, yeah, Earth Plexus is more about giving a structure. So if we come into an ecosystem, we will focus on 6 meta categories: education, business, politics, media. There's 6 meta categories, and we'll look for organizations that are doing the most work in that category, and we will start making them one of the 6 Earth Plexus members organizations in that region, and they can cycle through depending on what organization's doing the most. But it's important to put some structure around it. And so by having those 6 categories that we come into, even in a city, and work with groups that are focused on that category. And but the whole point of Earth Plexus is to have a bird's eye view to see, oh, this person over here in media, this organization is doing some program that is focusing on teaching kids this thing, and this group over here in sci-tech is doing something very similar. And so having that bird's eye view, will be able to be a meta network. We'll be able to network groups together, individuals together. And it's kind of what we're doing with TAFs as well with our membership. We'll be able to see, oh, this person, because of how they sign up, we'll be able, this person is interested in this. They should know about this event coming on over here. So what Earth Plexus really is a meta network. It's a way to come into an area, to select 6 organizations to occupy a certain category, and we will be able to start cross pollinating them, when we see ideas, not just the organizations, but the individuals in those organizations who may be members of, partner organizations. So it's really just a way, and it really is, like Brent said, that model of coalescence. We're all about coming in, and I wouldn't say coagulating because that gets hard, but it's about coalescing. If we come in, and we can come in with a mindset to coalesce groups together, right? Not just collaborate. They're all collaborating in their own silos, but we can coalesce by having an attitude of, let's all, put this together and stay tight over time. And that's really what we're doing. That's kind of what we're doing. It's a model to coalesce groups and to move beyond competitiveness. Because we are have a sense of urgency, we need to evoke our empathy for one another, because this is a very serious issue, and that's our superpower, is empathy. There's nothing weak or about that word. If you really think about it, it means a complete understanding of someone else's situation and a complete willingness to share what you know through your experience to help solve it. And again, the point is, right now there's an urgent need for this. None of this stuff is working anymore. The old paradigm approach of hierarchies and competitiveness, and the school system, the way it's still on autopilot from the industrial age, we need to wake up from that, or we're all in trouble. And again, the bottom line is, how do we make money quickly by doing this? We all need to do that. Let's not dance around it. We all need to, in some way, generate the revenue we need to keep our families fed, to keep a roof over our head, and to get those basic Maslow, needs met. And we need to do it urgently. And that's what we're trying to do with this. And we're not coming in with all the answers. We're not coming in with all the the solutions to how to do this, but we will understand that we need to do something quickly, and there's a way to do it that can sustain us as we build it.
Yes, Mr. Brentelman, what the interesting point you want to add, like if student get some sort of guideline from or collaboration from this university, their job opportunities or startup development opportunities will grow fast. Is there any kind of strategy this university has? Or because now COVID-19 situation, all of university as well as government corporation, they want to find out the way that how they can solve these things. Like few days ago, I saw that Google tried to build up something for training and development. In between 6 months, a student can join in the job market. So is there anything like that student get benefits?
Yeah, and that's, I've seen that program, and I've seen that there's a number of corporations out there doing similar programs. I can't speak on our TAF's Academy of the Future, as I haven't really been very engaged with the development side of things as much as Osi Nakachi and some other folks have been on, in Africa. But I know that ultimately, I'd really, my goal is to connect these types of programs. Google is one of them, but there's a number of these organizations. I'd need to go and look into some of my notes and do a little more research. But ultimately, we would be bringing these things together, and what I would really like to be doing is to be providing people open-ended solutions. So we're not just telling people, hey, this is exactly what you need to learn right now, but instead, here are some options, some things that you can, paths you can go down. Because I know that for me, the structure of things was, there were just certain things that I was interested in, and certain things that I wasn't interested in. And if I think that we can really, foster that interest, and sometimes you gotta focus on things that aren't your inherent passions as well. So I can't, pretend like people are going to be just doing things that are just fun the entire time. But ultimately, yes, the goal is to connect a variety of these organizations so that people can kind of get some prerequisites out of the way, and then be able to enter into these programs with these corporations around the world that are offering these school programs, these educational programs that are 3 months or 6 months. And once you complete these programs, people are able to start getting hired by these different organizations. And so ultimately, yes, that is definitely a goal of ours, is to connect some of these different programs into our network.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you, Mr. Tom. Like as you like developing these things, and you have financial strategy and other things, like how actually, let's say, local universities, example from Malaysia, from Singapore, from Indonesia, or if from India, like university, how they can get benefit through this process.
Well, what we'll bring as Earthplexus is first, it's a governing body. It's a single place where we have a network of organizations that are all doing kind of different things, but we have put them in 6 silos. So we know in any area who will be doing the most activity, the best programs, this type of thing, and we'll be able to keep that rotating. And secondly, we build platforms. We create either websites or online seminars, what have you. Anyway, live conferences, any way for people to share their ideas. It's all about giving them the platform. And but one of the key aspects of what we can do with this platform we're developing is ranking the interest of the broader group of people. What most people are thinking about will raise to the top. They'll be able to vote on certain ideas, not just the problems, but also the solutions. And so we will have a good handle on what most of the people are concerned about. So we can keep our finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist, really, of keeping our know what the collective consciousness is concerned about. And so that, and by having that information, we'll be able to better even network beyond one city to another, and just it'll give us a good bird's eye view of what the whole collective consciousness is working on. But what's really key, I think, right now, and maybe lacking in most university systems, is the requirement for transdisciplinary action. I've built that into the TAFS Academy model, because TAF stands for Transdisciplinary Agora for Future Discussion. So it's the first word is transdisciplinary. And so that is the way that will play out, is whether it's a TAFS course or an Earth Plexus program, the people involved in that course or that program will be required to weigh in on a problem that another category is handling. People in the politics pod of Earth Plexus will know what the primary issue and challenge is of people in sci-tech, media, business, what have you, in the other categories. And they'll be encouraged, if not mandated, to weigh in on a solution or a perspective on that problem, because I call that the interloper rule, because there's a real value in hearing somebody's solution from outside your discipline, to because they'll be able to think out of the box. They're not constrained by the traditions of that category, that kind of thing. So there's a real value in letting other people come in and give you an idea from the outside, because they don't have the history and all the constraints of that you may not be considering because you're part of that silo. So anyway, the whole transdisciplinary model and the interloper rule are key in everything we're doing as far as education, because we do need polymaths. We need people, and we're seeing more of them emerge. We need people that are really good at many things. The age of specialization into one specific thing is over. That was necessary during the industrial age. We needed people to be able to just do one thing on the assembly line at a time. And so and even in medicine, you needed one person to be a specialist in a very specific piece of medicine. And that probably won't change right away, but we do need more people who can look at things holistically. And that's really an intrinsic human skill, is to be able to sit back and understand a whole system based on all the information you've brought in through your senses and dealing with this system. And so that's the kind of thing that we need to flip everything around and start focusing on those holistic, intuitive, qualia uh, generated skills that we have, because we have AI and automation to take care of very specialized tasks and things. So and we have platforms to be able to create an economy about this. We just need to realize that, first of all, people need to ask themselves where their passion is, what is their unique human skill set that they came in to this world with, and how do you extract that, how do you enhance it, and then which platforms are best to monetize that. Right now we're seeing YouTube and a few major platforms where people are expressing their, and there's these platforms allow you to generate revenue and what have you, but those will also become more specialized in very specific ways, and we're seeing those are just exponentially growing, these different types of platforms that will allow people to make money using their passion. But there's got to be also a governing body. There's got to be some way to keep all of this in the right flow. Otherwise, we risk entropy. That's when we talk about Earth Plexus, it's more of a system to organize and coalesce groups in certain regions, but it is also a way to first extract experts from that region in that category, and who are talking about these things, these stopgap ways to help people bring, localize them, to find them locally, and then give them a platform to teach kids, younger people coming out of school, so just to speed everything up. And so that's what it's about. It's not coming in. We have a whole roster of experts. As you know, you've interviewed a bunch of us who have expertise in different areas that are necessary for this lag time, and so the way that would work would be a university could either bring on an Earth Plexus program, or they can hire one of our consultants for a specific program. But it's a very necessary thing, and there's a real urgent need for this until universities shift over to making these types of things mandated.
Thank you. Mr. Brentelman, like, as you are young and as you have engagement with the youth community, but my question is that what do you want to share about the mindset of youth community? Because at the COVID situations, they have to take a lot of challenges, even they have to go for the different mindset in these situations. And all of we actually working for academia and developing something for the youth community, especially the solution for the youth community. So how we can prepare a good mindset for achieve our objective?
So one of the people that are watching this show posed a question earlier referencing the Dunning-Kruger effect, which the Dunning-Kruger effect is essentially the idea that the less people know, the more they think they know, more or less. The more that, people kind of come off as though they know a lot when they know very little. And so I think that, that question really kind of shines light on the answer to your question. I think that growing up, my generation, and I think that younger generations might be experiencing it even more so, there's just this awareness of the fact that these teachers are living in a completely different world, that the knowledge and the information that these folks have that are of the older generations, these analog generations, there's something that's at a miss when it comes to the world that we're living in today. The things that they learned when they were in school helped them up to until this point, but those things are not necessarily what's going to be helping us. And I think that more and more you're seeing these students in classrooms that are aware of this, that are aware that these discussions in our history class is, we're being taught history that's been whitewashed, for instance. We're being taught these things from these perspectives, that are, of course, written by the victor. And now that we live in this, globalized world, we're kind of realizing that, hey, wait a minute, they're telling me this, but, I'm seeing that over here. And so I think that a great way to overcome this is by putting education, and into the power of our own hand and putting it into our own hands, allowing people to kind of go about their own process in their own way, and providing all of these materials for people to kind of engage with on their own. Because the structure that I experienced growing up, when it was, and I think that there's nothing inherently wrong with structure, but I think that when it's a structure that seems archaic, you kind of want to poke holes in it, and you kind of want to, buck against it. And so I think that by decentralizing some of this structure, and by allowing individuals, people who are students, people who are trying to learn, enabling these folks with tools where they can actually discover, these different routes of learning, things like I mentioned, the Khan Academy, where they can really, create their own curriculums in certain ways, because in school, in college and things like that, in university, the courses that I most enjoyed were ones that I took that because I wanted to take them. And of course, certain requisite courses are essential, but when you can tailor these things to personalize them for people's experiences, by offering lots of different styles of learning for similar topics, you really overcome a lot of that, at least in my opinion.
Thank you. One very good slogan I'm getting from this Earthplex University: enjoy the fear. Mr. Tom Rose, how youth community can enjoy the fear?
Yeah, well, that's a video I did, and that was actually advice that my father gave to me before I did my first skydive. He was a 101st Airborne Ranger, so he's jumped out of thousands of perfectly good airplanes. And so before I went on my skydiving excursion, I asked him for some advice, expecting it to be, make sure your knees are bent when you hit the ground, things like that. But his only advice was to enjoy the fear, because you won't feel this again. The next jump you'll be a little easier. And so he missed the fear that he originally had when he started jumping. And so that was advice I've used in different areas of my life, and that's kind of where we're at right now in this, it's a very precarious time in human history. If we don't get our act together quickly, and do these types of things quickly, we do risk existential threats, just even being displaced for so long that, and there's an increase in suicide because of people losing their jobs and being displaced. And that's because we have forgotten what it means to be human. We've forgotten to economize or monetize our natural gifts. And so I believe that we will look back, as bad as it was on 2020, we'll look back on the early 20s with some nostalgia. It's the same way we look back at high school and say, boy, if I only knew then what I know now, what choices would I have made differently? And my goal with all of this stuff that I work on is to not have any regrets from my deathbed that I didn't at least try to do that. Or, so it's a fearful time. It could be, if you're in that state, if you want to be in that place, you could be afraid of what's happening, or you could just see it as a challenge, and you can enjoy this fear, because fear has served us well. It's gotten us to where we are as the top predator on this planet. It has honed our instincts and honed our senses, in fact. So it has gotten us to where we are now, taking our babies to see the lions, right? It worked. We won. But there's also a downside to fear, in that it's still on autopilot, because it's a relatively short period of time between the cave and the condo. And so our brains are still kind of in this kind of state, and it'll be a while before it comes out of it. And so right now we're using our power of fear with our imaginations, and we're concocting, conspiracy theories and all types of things to be afraid of. And that's another thing I talk about a lot, is we project, because that's our evolution, is through fear and survival and having to do what we had to do to stay alive. Anytime there's a threat, we project ourselves onto it, right? And right now, AI and automation is a threat. and so we are assuming that it's going to want to be a robot overlord, or we're assuming it's going to want to take over, because that's what we would do because of our evolution. But we're also finding that that's not necessarily the case. That the smarter it gets, the kinder it becomes, if it is not perturbed by a human. And so that's the thing right now. That particular phrase, "enjoy the fear," was talking about this time in history that we're at, because we are up against some really major historical human advents that are coming, and they're slowly trickling out in different places, but they're also right in front of our face. And I think the one that's right in front of our face is this AI age, and the need to get our heads around this quickly and not ignore it. And we, as Generation X and above and high and older, don't have the tools to solve these things. So we need to look at young people. We need to stop condemning them about being in their phones all the time, and realize when they're in their phones, they are networking with a whole hive of people. It's a whole new mindset that we can't identify with. And so the best we can do, if not just get out of the way, is to at least give them platforms and try to help them organize their solutions for the betterment of our species. And that's, again, back to being a Gen X, being a small population in between these two massive populations, being the middle child of history, is a good place to be, because you need this kind of smaller, unassuming generation to give you the to enable you in any way we can. And so yeah, that's really the idea, and it is about listening. It's about doing what we can to get out of the way and to bring these solutions in, because there's so many out there, and we know we don't need to set up criteria for young people. You must have this degree, or you must have this number of years of experience. Those you must have this title. All that stuff is exclusive, and it's keeping us from really good ideas. So the whole idea is to have a system that can seek out these divine sparks, seek out these brilliant young minds that may not be Ph.D. students, so they may not have the right degree, but they've got really good ideas, and they've got a track record of producing certain things, and because all of that's changing. So we need to give them a platform, and so that's what this is about. And so enjoying the fear is, let's enjoy this fear. We should be a little bit afraid, because things are going to change so quickly, and they are changing so quickly, with driverless cars and AI taking over every industry, and we're going to be displaced if we don't change, if we don't adapt. That's also what we're really good at, is adapting. And so this is a form of forced adaptation. Earth Plexus is to give us a framework to allow ourselves to adapt in a really positive way, to build back better, if you will. So yeah, and we need to use this energy, use this sense of urgency, use the fear to motivate us to do these things a lot quicker than we otherwise would have. And so yeah, that's what that's all about, and we should enjoy it. We should enjoy the fear and the urgency that we are feeling right now to solve these problems.
Thank you, Mr. Brentelman. Yes, very interesting point come that how we can overcome from these present situations. So what the new thing you want to add for today's discussions, especially for the youth community?
Yeah, I think that just adding on to what Tom was discussing with fear, and I think it was the same person that I was referencing last time I spoke, discussing the threats to the environment that exist currently. And I think that, a lot of people fear technology inherently, and AI gets lumped into that category of technology that could potentially destroy the world. And, understandably so, let's be real. But I think that, folks who allow that fear to debilitate them and allow that fear to bleed into these resentments, and it's not beneficial. It doesn't help. But if we can identify these fears and consider that concept of coalescement, and coalesce with these groups that are engaging with these aspects of community or aspects of society that exist that we are fearful of, and we can input these fears that we have, and present them in ways where they can then be on these people's minds, rather than just simply saying, all right, those people over there are the enemy because they're doing X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z is what I'm afraid of. But it's a lot of times we project these fears, and yes, maybe X, Y, and Z may be occurring, but if we express our fears of why we have a fear about X, Y, or Z, then we can help mitigate the potential threat that we perceive, because not everybody thinks about everything in this big picture. A lot of people are just kind of focused on the task at hand, and so a lot of times people will kind of perceive different jobs, different things that people are doing, and they'll kind of project these fears, like I'm saying. And we can just sit there and conspire and fearmonger and blame and point fingers, or we can get involved, and find out ways to actually benefit and create solutions for these fears that are rational and reasonable. But if we're not doing anything rational or reasonable with our fear inherently, then there's no benefit to it, and there can be a benefit, and I think that discovering how we can use these fears in a beneficial way, and providing our perspectives when possible is going to be very helpful in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Brent-Tillman. Today, actually, we get a lot of information about this Earthling University. So after 1 week, I think we have more sessions. So I want to add it in Monday, because Monday actually we can attract more universities and other things. Already we are discussing with many university from Asia Pacific, not only in Malaysia, like from India and other countries as well. So that is our objective. And beside that, I just directly want to go for the concluding remarks, and especially what the key advice Mr. Tom and Mr. Brent-Tillman want to give for the educations as well as for this youth community.
Well, yeah, again, thanks again for doing these shows. It's really important stuff. And the key advice I have is to find your voice and to appreciate where you're from, and understand that your niche, your nook, the place you are, your corner of the world is fascinating to every other corner of the world. And we need to understand that. We need to preserve that. We need to appreciate where we're from, and appreciate the fact that the data that we generate of our behavior and the types of things we care about, although there's some universal themes that we all share. We love our kids. We all want to do well. We want our children to do well. There's certain meta themes that we all share. But we also need to understand how unique our experiences are and our cultures are, and preserve those, and that the data from someone in Malaysia is different than the data from somebody here in Colorado. And that is very valuable data. And so we need to talk about ways to monetize it, to appreciate it, and that's the first step, I think, of shifting this mindset towards an earth plexus state of mind.
Excellent. Mr. Brent-Tillman.
Sure. As Tom was saying, thank you so much, Sharif, for having us on again. It's always a pleasure. And closing remarks that I'd like to leave the audience with, whoever's listening, is just the idea that, as we were just saying, fear isn't necessarily the enemy, but it's how we act on this fear that is really important and defines what it means to us. And I think that we need to all work on not allowing this fear to create more divisions in our society, in our world, in the universe, in Earth. We need to focus on unity and focus on the fact that these fears are inherent, and if we can keep our emotional response in check, and leverage our fear in a way that's with the best intentions, and coalesce with people who we might initially be afraid of. We might initially perceive people as being part of this problem that we have identified. But if we can realize that it's not this group that's the problem, and that these fears that we have that are the problem, and if we can overcome our fear and our suspicions and enter into these communities, then we can share these perspectives in a beneficial way and mitigate these threats. And I think that that's highly, highly important stuff for this day and age.
Thank you. It's really, really great discussion, and I request all of the universities, academy, as well as think tank, policymakers, corporations, those who joining in World Talent Economy Forums, you can join these projects. We are trying to restructure and develop a new things for our youth community. And by this way, I'm sure many of the academy and university students and the youth community, they will get a lot of guidelines and support. And especially, I think they can overcome their fears in COVID-19 situations. So thank you, Mr. Tom, and thank you, Mr. Brent Ellman, for joining today's sessions. And thank you, our audience, those who always support World Talent Economy Forum. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sharif.
Cheers.